Good evening, and welcome to the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership's third annual State of the District Forum. My name is Nancy Hart, and I'm the president of the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership. We'd like to begin with a huge thank you to School District 271 for partnering with us this evening, as well as our business partner, Java on Sherman, for the donation of refreshments. Please help yourself to the coffee and the cookies in the back. Thank you as well to Bunkhouse Media for filming tonight's event. Please refer to the city's website at cdaid.org for a list of program times and check the Channel 19 tab. And most especially, we'd like to thank you for joining with us this evening. This forum allows you to become informed about public education issues in our community. It also provides you an opportunity to engage with our school district and have dialogue with these representatives on public education issues. The Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership is an independent, nonprofit organization motivated by the belief that every student in our district deserves a public education of the highest quality. We believe that excellence in public education can be achieved for our students when all parties in our community come together, share a common vision, contribute ideas and resources, and take collaborative action. In addition to last year's second annual State of the District event, we organized our first annual Disco Inferno Fall Fundraiser. Aside from the chance to party like it was 1976, we raised over $7,300 for our public school librarians. CEP has been very touched by the stories from the librarians and their students, sharing with us what they were able to purchase, much needed materials for their libraries with the funds that they received. We have also had the privilege to partner with the school district in a teacher appreciation program. Through this program, we have acknowledged teachers that have been selected by their peers to receive an Invest, Inspire, and Innovate award. Since the beginning of this school year, we have proudly honored 7 elementary teachers in their classrooms in front of their students, and we will continue to honor 1 elementary teacher each month for the rest of the school year.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening. I'm Chris Meyer, the Vice President of the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership. Our first speaker this evening from the Coeur d'Alene School District will be Superintendent Matt Handelman. Mr. Handelman will provide an overview of the district performance and present an update on the upcoming maintenance and operations levy. Our next topic for the evening will be focused on the district's new math and literacy goals, presented by Ryan Gillespie, coach of secondary development and mathematics, and Lynn Kopp-Fulbrook, coach of elementary development and English language arts and literacy. Mike Nelson, the director of curriculum and assessments, will then speak on the district's plans for preparing students for the new ISAT 2.0. Superintendent Handelman and Laura Rumpler, Director of Communications, will then close the evening with a discussion on the Coeur d'Alene School District's strategic direction. Following each discussion, we will include a 10-minute segment dedicated for audience members to ask questions of the presenters. Please write your questions on the form attached to tonight's program and pass them to a CEP board member at the end of the aisle. I'd like to recognize Chris Pfeiffer and Amy Voller standing in the back of the room with their hands up. Flag them down if you'd like to submit a question associated with any of the topics we cover tonight. We'll try to fit in as many of them as we can during our 10-minute question and answer period. We'd also like to welcome in the audience tonight our current school board members. Present this evening are trustees Krista Hazel and Dave Eubanks. We'd like to now welcome our first presenter this evening, Superintendent Matt Handelman.
Thank you, Chris and Nancy. Thank you very much for having us tonight and putting on this event. Thanks to everyone, as you said, for coming out to be a part of this, to learn a little bit more and to ask questions. I get to kick things off and do a little, I call it a little bragging about the great things that our students are doing thanks to our great teaching staff. And so I'll be covering some data from the district. I'm going to give a little caveat right at the beginning. You're going to see some data that shows that we are sometimes head and shoulders above our peers in the state, above even those around the country. However, one of the things that we talk about all the time is our continuous improvement. You're going to see in every one of those areas that we're performing well, that there's always room to get better. And that's one of the things that we talk about all the time from our administrative team all the way into the classrooms and with all the instructors and instructional assistants, that we're always trying to help our kids do better and therefore help the performance of the district at the same time. As you can see this saying, we do believe this, that strong schools make a strong community, and a strong community has strong schools in it. And we're proud to be a very important pillar in our community. And
I'm working.
this button, right?
Yeah.
Technical.
You will unplug it from the computer trip. Is it stuck in there? Down to the bottom. Look at that.
That would help.
All those best ways to
There you go. So the first data point that I'm going to share with you has to do with our graduation rates. And if you were at the board meeting the other night, on Monday night, you saw we did some presentation. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But for the last 10 years or so, we have had a steady increase of our graduation rate. And you can see that, especially at our two traditional high schools, we are incredibly strong. We are above 95%. Venture high schools are our alternative high school, and there are a variety of things that caused that slip from 2013 to 2014. But the fact that it's an alternative high school poses its own challenges as it is. I will tell you that we've been doing a number of things this year to help the students be more successful. Our principal there, Mike Lindquist, has been very instrumental in getting more credit retrieval opportunities for our students, as well as finding ways. We're part of a system that I'll talk about a little bit later to help individual students when they're struggling. The heads up that we gave the board the other night is that the state is being told to calculate our graduation rate differently. So we're going to see some shifts in that graduation rate. And I'm not going to go into detail with that, but we've had a heads up from the state that it's going to shift for everyone in the state in this coming year. One thing that you might have heard about, there's been a campaign on television called Don't Fail Idaho. And unfortunately, what it's doing is it's painting a pretty dismal picture of our students and our schools in Idaho. And what we have tried to do is pull some of the data from the kind of data points that they share and say, well, here's how Coeur d'Alene is doing compared to what they call these dismal rates. So you can see, for example, in this first one, college-going rates of high school graduates. And the data we get is from higher ed, and this is the most recent data that we have so far, so 2010. But you can see that in Idaho, it's only 45% to the U.S. average of 62%. So again, that's where Don't Fail Idaho might say, well, we're not doing very well. Take a look at where Coeur d'Alene is. About 2/3 of our students are going to college. So again, not only are we outpacing Idaho, but also the national averages. Advanced placement classes in the high schools, the scores at 3 or above, in other words, essentially being able to earn college credit, you can see once again, not only is Coeur d'Alene School District outpacing Idaho by quite a bit, but also the U.S. average. So this is going to college directly from high school, and once again, same kind of data trend, as well as those obtaining a degree. Now, you might know that the goal for our state is now 60%, and you can see Idaho was at 27%. We're very proud that we're above Idaho's average and the United States average is a great example of where, when I was saying, we have plenty of room for improvement. We know we want to get much better, but we are outpacing, and the work that the teachers are doing in their classrooms and all the folks are doing in the schools is helping all this. Some more data points. This is the IRI, the Idaho Reading Indicator. So this is a test of students' reading fluency in the early grades. Reading fluency leads to, it's a foundational skill that'll lead to better comprehension as they're learning, reading to learn as opposed to learning to read. And you can see this is broken down by grade level, and you can see that the blue line is Coeur d'Alene and the red line is the average in the state. And once again, you can see how we outpace the state in all of these categories. Second grade and third grade is similar. Not quite as much of an outpacing in second and third grade, but we continue to outpace the state. Now, one of the things in Don't Fail Idaho talks about, someone told me today they heard that only 10% of our students are reading on grade level at grade 3. Well, you can see at the state level it's about 73%, and the district level it's about 82%. So once again, we are doing well for our students. We have room to grow. If I was a parent of one of those 18%, I'd want us to do better, and I'm sure you would too. Another way, It's different. Oh. I think someone else is doing that to us. Seriously. In the control room, perhaps? No? Ooh. This is good. This is good. So other data I was going to share with you has to do with our ISET. And Chris mentioned before that we are going to have a presentation about the new generation ISET, the ISET 2.0. But we've been very proud. We haven't had data in about a year and a half from the ISET. But while we were receiving data, we continue to be, for several years running, the highest performing large school district in the state of Idaho. And we're very proud of that. Again, still room to grow, but a feat that we're proud of. Now, I'm good, I think, because we're going to get to the levy stuff, and I have that all right here. So we could, I suppose, if we want to, we could hand out the levy fact sheets. So I've been going around on this tour of the city, both internally with our schools, our parent groups, our teachers, our booster clubs, as well as working with any community group that wants to listen to us and talking about this maintenance and operations levy that we are running. March 10th is the date of it. And we do have some literature within the information, and Laura Rumpler is going to pass some of these out to you. Within the information that we have, we do talk about the data, but we're really focusing on making sure people understand why are we coming to you asking for a vote of approval. State law says that every 2 years we have to come back to ask the voters for their thumbs up or thumbs down. We have to check with the voters to make sure that we're doing what they expect us to do. And so it's an obligation, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to ask the community to show what we're doing. And like I said, our data, I think, shows quite well that we are indeed doing well. But we also have to check to see, are we focused in the areas that the community wants? Are we living up to what we said we were going to do? And so it is an opportunity for us to go out and listen. Another thing that I say to everyone is that really we could say that we're quote unquote campaigning for 9 weeks between when the board sets its levy amount and when the voters go to the polls. At the same time, what I say is that we are actually campaigning every day. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, really, and 365 days a year. What we are doing is what we hope that the community will judge us on when they get to go to the polls on March 10th. So What is this maintenance and operations levy all about? In statute, the words maintenance and operations are there. So the state law calls it that. It calls it also a supplemental levy. And it does, it supplements the funds from the state. We do get state funding every year. But that state funding actually went down quite a bit around the time of the recession. It's just inching its way back up. But our community, even before that amount went down, said we want more for our kids in our community. We want to be able to offer all sorts of things that state funding alone would not offer. What are some examples? Now, if you have the fact sheet in your hand, some examples of that are in the dark blue box on the front of your sheet, which include things like providing a safe environment for our kids. What does that mean? Well, it might mean that we have school nurses, much beyond what the state funds. It also has to do with our school resource officers. We have a great partnership with the City of Coeur d'Alene and the police department, and we share those officers and the expenses of those officers with them, as well as this year with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department. We have one through them. So, and here we are at this list of the kinds of things. In addition to that, we are supporting programs for kids, whether it's extracurriculars and sports and the kinds of things that might keep our kids hooked into school. Some kids need those things to be motivated to go to school. Also things like advanced programs, advanced learning programs for our students, and remedial programs as well. Now this year our board did decide to raise the levy amount, and it's always a risky thing. It's always something that the board takes very seriously when they consider setting a levy amount. And they asked back at the end of last calendar year, are there unmet needs in our school district? And we said, well, yeah, there are absolutely unmet needs. And they asked us to put a list together of things that we could do, such as getting a nurse in every school, whereas right now we only have about a nurse for every other school on average. There was a list of about $5.5 million of needs annually that were put together, and we knew that we can't do everything. We can't claim that we're going to have everything that we want for our kids. It would be nice to, but we also know there's a point where what I call a tipping point. We can't ask for too much, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But what the board decided on, they were very intentional when they looked at this long list of needs. They focused on these two items that are in the red box on your handout and are in the red box on the screen. One of them is lowering class size, and the plan for that has to do with getting us down to the pre-recession class size limits in kindergarten through fifth grade in our elementary schools, and then also strategically lowering class size in our secondary schools, middle schools, and high schools. We'll be, through this plan, if the levy does pass, we will be adding about 10 teachers the first year and another 6 the second year. So again, very intentional to keep that focus on the students and helping to have more personalized instruction by having smaller classes. The other piece that they focused on was getting us back onto the state recommended textbook adoption cycle. So getting new curricular materials into the students' hands. I've been here for 5 years, and we have only been able to do essentially a half an adoption in 5 years, whereas if you were on the cycle, you would have done 5 adoptions. We've had to make cuts, and that's one place that's really suffered greatly. In order to hop back onto this cycle that the state provides to us, we need some support locally if we want to get these materials into our students' hands. I'm going to be talking later with Laura about our strategic direction, and I'll come back to this idea of making sure we equip our teachers with the right tools for our students. So that's very intentional in terms of what those new funds will go to. We know that if we're asking for more, we have to say what we're going to do with them, and then we have to prove to you that we're doing it, and that's our intention. So I use the word supplemental levy, I use the word maintenance operations levy, and really we now use the word essential. In order to do these things that the community has said we want these things for our kids, we have had to come back and ask for this levy every 2 years. And it is now about 20% of our general fund. 20%, 1 out of every $5 in our general fund comes from the local taxpayers. One thing you might have heard is that the state is considering, the governor, as well as the new state superintendent, Ibarra, is talking about increasing funding to districts. And we're hoping that happens. And the question is, well, why do you need more money locally? Well, what usually happens last year when the funds increased is a lot of those funds are earmarked. In other words, you have to spend them on certain things that we're told to. Good things, professional development, for example, was one big chunk, and also leadership awards for teachers last year. But if we want to focus on those two goals that I just showed you, if we want to ensure that we can do those things, we need to, and those are local goals, then we need to have local dollars to ensure that we can do them, because the state cannot tell us how to spend those dollars. So how will this affect me? I talk about the fact that we're going to raise the levy rate. This is assuming that it passes. This shows Coeur d'Alene all the way on the left-hand side. Our levy rate, which is the cost per $1,000 of assessed valuation, is $1.97. You can see this compares us with our neighbors, Post Falls and Lakeland, and so we're sort of right between them. And then also those other ones, those are mostly the largest districts in the state. Kellogg is another one that's nearby us. But we often compare ourselves to the largest districts in the state, as I did when I was talking about the ISAT. And you can see we're right in line. Even with the increase, we're right in line with the others. What does this mean for me, though, as a taxpayer? Now, I want to make sure that you know that this says average property owner, average taxpayer. We're basing this on a $200,000 assessed valuation house. That doesn't mean that that's how much you bought it for, and it doesn't mean how much you might sell it for, but what this assessed valuation is. And we are also assuming the homeowner's exemption. In other words, that if it's your primary residence, you can knock some value off of that in terms of what you're taxed. And you can see that very top line there, this is current voter approved levy. That's how much will come through on the next one before this March's levy is on the rolls. So $1.69 per thousand is what it is right now. The monthly cost is laid out there for you, as well as the annual cost. You don't usually see those amounts. You usually see it in 6-month increments, but just so you have an idea of what it costs you. The proposal is on that next line down, $15 million. And you can see that $1.97 I just mentioned, and how much the monthly and annual costs are. What's important to me is the little tag on the bottom, and this is on the back of the handouts that you have, the gray boxes on the back of your handout. But the potential increase, if this is approved, is about $2.50 a month, or about $31 per year. We know that is a lot for some folks. I was at a meeting today where someone said, well, the $2.58 a month, that's how much I'm saving per gallon of gas I buy these days. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can look at it. It depends on you as an individual. I also had an email today from someone who said, well, no one in my neighborhood has a house that's worth less than $400,000, so you're lying. And what we're trying to say is this is the average, and we could help you try to calculate it if you need help. So this is what the ballot language will say. It's very clear. Either I'm in favor of this or I'm against it. You'll see a lot of information coming out from the school district. We're not allowed to tell you how to vote. We can provide you a lot of information. We can answer whatever questions you have. But that's what the question is. Are you in favor of this or are you against it? On March 10th. You do have an opportunity also, if you can't make it to the polls on March 10th, to apply for an absentee ballot. We do have absentee ballot applications in the back. Paula Morano is holding them up. And you can apply for an absentee ballot for all the elections for the year if you'd like to. You have to be registered to vote to apply for this or to vote. And so you can register to vote anytime between now and February 13th. And then you can also go in the day of the election, March 10th, and actually register to vote that day. We have all this information on our website as well in terms of absentee ballot information, where you go to the polls if you're going to vote at the polls. And we also have on our website, cdaschools.org, We have all this information there. We also have a special email address set up. If you look in the blue box on the back of your sheet, you'll see info@cdaschools.org. If you don't get your questions answered tonight, you can always write to that. That's where the person wrote to me today saying I was lying. So just so you know, we will answer anything that comes, and it's important for us to know what's out there, what your questions are. So would you like me to remain standing, or are you going to collect any questions?
Thank you, Superintendent Handelman. We have any audience questions to pass on to board members?
You do.
It's a test.
It's we're above average in Coeur d'Alene. Remember I said that?
Raise the bar.
That's right, raise the bar.
Okay, so if there's no questions? Yes, I hand. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, if there is no questions then for Mr. Handelman, we will move on to our next presenter. We do have a slight change in the program, so we're keeping you on your toes. Our next presenter will be Mike Nelson. He will address the district's plan for preparing students for the new ISAT 2.0. Immediately following his presentation, we're flip-flopping here, new math and literacy goals will be addressed by Ryan Gillespie and Lynn Kopp-Fulbrook.
Is it going to work? It might.
Yep. All right, it's all you. Thank you.
Interesting when you rely upon it so much how it all works out. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Nelson. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Assessment for the district, and it's an honor to be here with you this evening. Tonight, I'm actually going to be guiding you through two different elements. The first is a set of new goals. We presented to you last year that we were in the midst of the Idaho Coeur. So we're going to give you an update as to how the Idaho Coeur has been implemented, how we're doing so far as a district, and then we're going to transition that into the new assessment, the new expectation. As you know, Coeur d'Alene has quite the pedigree. We are the highest achieving large district in the state. We have been the highest achieving large district in the state for 4+ years. And you can look at it from numerous measures, many of those that Superintendent Handelman showed, and some of the ones that I'll be showing you with tonight. But there's a reason that we can do that, and it's because of the quality of people in our classrooms, the quality of expectations that we have from our parents and this community, and the fact that we're always changing, we're adapting, we're trying to move forward. We recognize that we're not perfect, but we do also recognize that we have those same goals. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to be able to share with you this evening. Part of the challenge that I have tonight is to be able to present to you a whole lot of lingo. So if you had your bingo cards tonight, you probably could have done a few things to be able to win a prize some evening. Can we give them some free cookies or something by the end of the night? We'll try to get through that. Education is kind of difficult to manage because of the fact that there's lingo in every grade level. You'll hear a lot of those things up there. And we're going to try to get to the basics for you because we want to ask for your support just as much as you're asking us to do the best job we can with our students. So I want to walk you through some things that we had talked about last year at the state of the district. I want to get back into a review of two different elements that we presented to you last year. And the first was this new thing called the Common Core State Standards, or as we call them in Idaho, the Idaho Core. Just to make sure that you are completely clear, they are one and the same. Okay? The state of Idaho calls them the Idaho Core so that it gives us flexibility to add something else if we were to want to do so. Okay? But a couple of updates for you. 43 states currently and several principalities have adopted these uniform standards in their area. Okay? What it allows you to do is see that, well, I'll come to that in just a second. These were adopted in our state in November of 2010. When we saw those standards come out especially in K through 5, kindergarten through 5th grade, we knew that we had to have a quick transition plan because the state of Idaho said that we had to start teaching the core standards in the 2013-14 school year, last year. We knew that that wasn't realistic, that you can just turn on a switch and expect that kids could do it. So we started a transition plan right after that. At this particular point, we started doing some things to think about, well, what does this mean? What is this implementation all about? A couple of things that are really important. Number one, they're called core standards because they're consistent. Okay? But standards are just goals. We have not been given a list of textbooks that we have to adopt. We have not been told how we have to teach. We have not been told, here's your curriculum, now follow it. There's no book, there's no Bible as to how you have to teach this. It's up to each individual district to be able to say, how are we going to get our kids there? So Coeur d'Alene looks a little bit different in the Idaho Core than Post Falls, Lakeland, Boise, Sandpoint, wherever you go. Our curriculum is ours. It was created by our teachers to be able to get our kids to that expectation. A couple of things to reinforce. The goals are there, but these are not just true academic English language arts and math goals. There's writing built in, there's technology skills, there's real-world application all built into this because it also brings to mind what our community wants. You want kids, yes, that can read and write and speak, but you also want people who can critically think. Okay? So those elements are built into it as well, and they are part of the assessment. We are going to be measuring kids' ability to listen. We are going to be measuring kids' ability to give deep thought and give detailed answers. Much different from what we've been asked to do before. The standards come in two different varieties. They come in English language arts, literacy, science, social studies, even though they're not towards science and social studies, they're literacy in those content areas. And they come across the areas. So what you see here at the very top are the reading standards. From 1 all the way up to grade 10. There is an 11, 12, but it's kind of a capstone accumulation of things. The writing standards, speaking and listening, language standards, foundational skills. So these are stair-stepped up. And every year we build upon existing competencies. We make them a little bit more challenging. We give them a soft landing. We build more things up to it until you get up and up and up and get to that piece where every student in our district is ready for college and or career. When we give that graduation diploma, we know that that kid is ready to do anything that they want to do. Here's the same progressions in mathematics. Counting and cardinalities only in kindergarten, but now we're doing things across the time. You may remember, reflect back even to my high school days at Coeur d'Alene High School. I took geometry in sophomore year. That was the only time that I experienced geometry. Now we're teaching geometry elements in kindergarten, first, second, third, all the way up. So now you can see how things are kind of enveloped together. It's not like we're just teaching individual subjects along the way. We're taking a look at knowledge. We're piecing things together. And we're using the expectations of our community to get there. A couple of other things that I want to do. There's that stair-step approach that we had talked about. Kids are climbing up. They're hitting little things. They'll hit a safe landing. Okay, yeah, I can do 2 plus 2. I can do simple addition. Well, let's make it a little bit tougher and say, well, let's get into some simple algorithms. Okay, well, let's get up a little bit more, and now you're getting into Pythagorean theorem and into algebra. Now let's come up a little bit more, and you're getting into trigonometry. But look, there's some literacy pushed into here as well. Again, we're having higher expectations every single year, but it's up to us to say how we get there. So that's my overview that I want to get through that we presented to you last year. We have some things that have happened since that time. We knew that in creating an expectation in our district, we had to have pathways. We had to have some common understandings. So this is the graphic that I've created called the 3 doors to the core. Okay? When we first started looking at the core standards, we had to really analyze what we had. We had to look at our textbooks. We had to look at our curriculum guides. Did we have what we needed to do to be able to get the kids where we needed them? Then we started looking at professional development. Mr. Handelman talked a little bit about the professional development from the state. We were doing it a long time before we actually got paid for it by the state of Idaho. Okay? That's what we do in those secret meetings Monday mornings. You know, we talk about it. We share lessons. We share ideas. Then we knew that technology was going to be a big one. Seth Denniston is our new director of technology in our district. He's integral to making sure that things work because those technical skills are now built into the standards. Finally, we need to reach out to you. We need to make sure that you can see what we have. We've got all of our curriculum, all of our assessments, and everything up on our district website, and we want to hear from you about how it's going because we do change things often. The only way that we're going to be successful in getting to a full appreciation of the core standards and getting our kids to this pretty high goal at each grade level is by having 21st century instructional materials in every kid's hand and having our teachers trained to be able to deliver that in a very demanding way to students. We have to be prepared for the 21st century assessments that come with those expectations, and we have to have the technologies that bridge the gap between the two. But there's also some big shifts going on as well. Again, I used my example of geometry, so I'd like to introduce two of the most important people that we have in our district. Our instructional coaches, our classroom teachers that we have asked to guide along every instructional member of our district. We have over 550 teachers in our district. So what I've done is I've put together a couple of things here that talk about the shifts, the things that we're doing a little bit differently in our classroom. The first shift I'd like to introduce Mrs. Lynn Kopp-Fulbrook. Mrs. Kopp-Fulbrook has been in our district for several years and has been an instructional coach, usually in secondary education in English language arts. She's going to now talk to you about the 6 shifts that we're seeing in those classrooms.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. Which one? That one, okay. And I'm going to talk to you about the shifts, and as Mike said, the shifts are shifts in expectations. Take you through, am I too close? Okay. In the ELA and literacy. And I have the privilege of working with kindergarten all the way through 12th grade teachers in this area. So the first big shift is looking at increasing reading and informational text. So it is increasing the balance of informational and literature into our classrooms and just giving students opportunity to read more informational. So that's a big shift. The next one is text complexity. So in addition to the shift in adding more informational text, we're increasing the complexity, which Mike showed you the screen that include the word rigor. So complexity is a number of things. It considers the reader task, what they're going to do with it, qualitative features and quantitative features. And again, we want to start, our teachers are working on scaffolding instruction and text in classroom to reach that staircase that Mike was talking about. So it increases as each grade level and also within the grade level itself. The third is the academic vocabulary. This is one I'm quite passionate about and lead a lot of professional development around. It's intentional content vocabulary as well as academic vocabulary. I don't think I'm tall enough, that's the problem here. And also to be accessible in all contents, not just our ELA areas, but across science, social studies, math. I provide a lot of that training also to our math department, which Ryan's going to talk about. The last 3 shifts, text-based answers. This is a huge one that's impacting our classrooms and really creating students who are able to think. It's asking students to get into text and provide evidence. So looking for evidence and having rich conversations about those with their peers and with their teachers to accelerate their potential and their ability to think. Then we have increasing writing from sources and Students here are asked to, again, cite back to the evidence in the text, using a variety of texts, and then actually write. So our standard shift there is that we're really making a concerted effort to focus on opinion writing in K through 6, and 7 through 12, it moves into an argument. So it's not just about how they feel about things, but looking for those connections and relying on the sources that they're reading in the classroom. And finally, the last one, which I think is the biggest shift of all, and I'm not sure if that's why Mike put it at the end, but it is making sure that literacy is a focus across. So it's not just the responsibility of our English language arts teachers, but that it is flowing through into our content areas and giving students opportunities to access nonfiction and literature in all avenues in the classroom. And
so you can see how managing these shifts has been key and why we wanted to start for years. That's not something that you can just say, this is what we're going to do now. We have to continually train our kids to be able to meet those expectations. But it's not just the shifts in English language arts either. We also have our instructional coach for secondary mathematics here today, Ryan Gillespie. We were very lucky to pluck him away from Bonners Ferry a few years ago, and he's been incredible to be able to manage these same types of shifts in mathematics as well.
So thank you, Mike, for the kind words. Thanks for having me here today. You may have heard the term about curriculum in the U.S. for mathematics, that it's a mile wide but an inch deep. And if you haven't heard that, you've all lugged around the textbook that was this thick and weighed about 40 pounds. And the problem that we have had in the past as math teachers and as a system is we had so much that we had to teach kids each and every year. So kids learned just a little bit about a lot of stuff. And then it got worse because then summer would hit and that surface level understanding would sort of fade away over those 3 months. And then they'd come back and then we'd kind of just have to redo most, a lot of that got redone. And so we weren't able to, at each grade level, meaningfully extend because we just had so much to teach at that surface level. So we knew, Common Core recognized that this was one of the biggest things standing in our way of getting kids to be better mathematical thinkers. So the first thing, and I'm going to focus you up on the focus and coherence. So the first thing they did is they said, you know what, instead of having to teach all this stuff every year, at each level, we're going to really spell out fewer ideas, but we're going to ask teachers to do them really, really well, to go for depth. Camp out on them, let the kids explore, let them investigate, get their hands dirty with it. And then, once those foundations are getting built and kids are become better thinkers on those key ideas, then Common Core also has a very clear plan about that coherence then, is how does it flow then to the next level? Prior to Common Core, a lot of times we just made the numbers harder as you went through, but that wasn't necessarily better mathematical thinking. So with focus in place, now Common Core really can put a more meaningful scaffolding process so kids each year are becoming better mathematical thinkers, going to deeper understandings, kind of that staircase graphic that Mike shared with you earlier. So those are the first two shifts. The next four I'm going to kind of put together, but I'm going to kind of reference you back to probably a traumatizing experience that we've all had. And when you get that 40 problem worksheet or assignment, and there's no words, it's just bare bones problems. The teacher showed you how to do it, and now you need to sit there and just crank them out over and over and over. And the goal, what we were all doing there, was we were trying to get procedural fluency. They wanted us to practice over and over so that fluency just became part of what we knew. And Common Core isn't saying we want to get rid of fluency, but Common Core is saying there's way more to mathematics than just practicing worksheets over and over and over again. So Common Core wants fluency. We need kids, as you see there, speed and accuracy with simple calculations, but it has to be dovetailed with deeper understandings. Kids need to know that 7 times 5 equals 35. They need that piece of information in their brains. But if they don't understand why 7 times 5 equals 35, if they can't visualize it, if they can't think of a strategy how to get to that information, if they forget it, that's going to be problematic. So we really, at every step of the way, are using deep understanding, conceptual understanding to support those procedures and those facts. And then also with that is the application piece. Kids need to be able to apply 7 times 5 in something meaningful. Otherwise, that fact is pretty useless. To go back to your long worksheet, there was always maybe 40 problems, but there was always problem 41, and it was the one-word problem. And it was a horrible experience because even if you knew how to do the first 40, you read the word problem, and most of the time it was like, well, maybe if I just put the numbers in the right places, type it into the calculator, that seems close enough, there's my answer. Common Core is saying application needs to be way more than just the word problem at the end. We need application infused throughout everything we do. It needs to be in the beginning, the middle, the end. Kids should be constantly working with application because if we can't apply it, why are we taking kids down those roads? The last thing, dual is intensity. And you may have heard the pendulum swinging in math education. And one decade, it's kind of, we need more back to the basics, facts and procedures. And the next decade, it goes the other way, no more application. And it just has been going back and forth for about 100 years. And Common Core is the first set of standards. They stop swinging the pendulum. It's both. It's all important. We need both of those things working together because when kids have a deep understanding and they're working constantly to apply it, then they become more fluent. They're not mutually exclusive things like we've looked at them in the past. So the dual intensity, that all those things should be getting equal attention, not just one or the other. So yeah, those have been our 6 big areas we've been working on for math.
Thank you. Now, of course, you can see how we're doing as well as we are as a district. It's people like this who have been working with those teachers. Of course, though, we've looked at this presentation now for a week, and Lynn, being the English language arts teacher back over there, she said, you spelled math wrong. We went past that slide, so hopefully you didn't catch it. We do have some to-do lists, though. Again, we're not there yet. We've got some things that are there, and these are the big goals that we're really trying to work on this year. Number 1, we're investigating new math instructional materials. The textbooks that we're trying to reach these new standards are from 2002 in our district. The average age of a textbook in Coeur d'Alene is 15 years. We get a lot out of a book. But at the same time, it only goes so far when you're trying to reach a goal that's different from 2002. So we're investigating new texts right now to be able to support that. We're also taking a look at all of our novels. Novels are the same thing. Many of our novels are many years old, classic titles, but we want to make sure that if we're still going to be teaching To Kill a Mockingbird, that it meets the right targets. So we're reanalyzing all of those with a brand new analyzer that we put together to the board in August of this last year. And then, of course, across content areas, that continued focus on inquiry and the depth of knowledge that it takes to be able to get there. So that's the first part of the presentation tonight. Those are the new goals. We also have new expectations tied with that. And those new expectations come to this, called the Smarter Balanced Assessment. This is going to be a challenge because in the state of Idaho, we have changed the name again. We are going to be giving the Smarter Balanced to students throughout the district in grades 3 through 10 this next year, but we are calling it the ISAT, which is the same name of the old test that we had that was very simple, multiple choice across the board. This ain't your mama's ISAT, okay? We're working through making sure that our kids are prepared to meet that target. So again, I'd like to take a few moments of your time to recycle some of the things and review what we had done from the previous time. Again, we're doing well in Coeur d'Alene. On the previous ISAT, for the last 4 years in a row, highest achieving large district in the state. And if you look at some of these numbers across the bottom here, you'll notice that in many cases we severely outperformed other districts in our state. 3 to 4 to 5 percentage points higher than our nearest large district. Not too shabby. Again, I think it came to the point where we knew that. But what about the SAT? Every junior in the state of Idaho takes the SAT. We are the highest achieving district on the SAT as well. Again, you can take a look at that comparison to large districts. We have good things going for us. The Smarter Balanced Assessment is a consortium of 27 different states. Idaho is a governing state, so they actually have a seat on the board and saying what it looks like in the state of Idaho. There are the other members of the states that will have it. So for the first time, Coeur d'Alene School District will be able to do the following. We've always known for the past several years we're the highest achieving large district of the state. But how would we compare with Bellevue, Washington? who's the highest achieving large district in Washington? How would we compare to an Oregon or a California or New Mexico or Nevada, any of those states up there? How would we do? We're about to find out. So now we come into finding out what kids are going to do. In each section, each subject, English language arts and math, students are going to take 2 different exams. One is called a computer adaptive test. One is called a performance task. Very briefly, the performance task puts kids in real-world situations. Last year in 4th grade, kids in the classroom got an opportunity to read about new home designs. They got to look at ads from Lowe's and Home Depot and other building supply stores. But what they didn't know is what they would be asked to do with that information. Until the day of the test, then they came in and the prompt read something like this. You have decided that it's time to renovate your kitchen. Okay? Use the information that you've learned about from watching the videos, looking at the ads, and come up with an idea. Here's the layout of your kitchen, measure the perimeter. How much flooring are you going to need? Well, what style of flooring would you like to have? How much does it cost per square foot? Oh, here's your budget. Do you have enough to do what you wanted to do? You can see kind of how it goes on and on and on. Pretty cool. That's one part of the exam. The other part of the exam is a computer adaptive exam. In this case, students will be delivered questions on grade level, and based on the pattern of their responses, are going to be asked to ask more difficult questions, or maybe a little bit easier question to find out how they're doing in each of those areas that we talked about. So we're going to be able to figure out a lot more things than just getting a report to parents and guardians saying, your student is proficient, or your student is advanced, or basic, or below basic. The time is estimated. It is going to take longer, but again, think about the quality of kids are doing. If we really do have to test kids, this is kind of what we'd want them to do, is that type of application work than simply just filling in a bubble. Okay? Here's an example of a performance task. This is a 3rd grade performance task, and students will read the prompt off to the left-hand side and drag the number of chairs necessary into the lawn to be able to answer the question. So, yes, they're going to have to do some critical thinking skills. Yes, they're going to have to use some algorithmic and skills, but they're also going to be using some technical skills as well. Remember, I talked to you about that it's not just English language arts. There's other things that are built into it. Here's an example of what's called selected response. Multiple choice was so 1998. Okay? This is multiple choice now, where there could be multiple correct answers for each question. Then, missing video, sorry, this is the performance task piece. What you would be seeing here is a video from Japan about how robots are helping the elderly. Okay? It's about a 1.5-minute video. Again, teachers would be given the video, and they would say, show this to kids. Then brainstorm. What don't they know? This is your participation part. What don't they know? The question, right. So it's giving that deep creative thought. Here was the question. So a statement has been made that robots can actually save lives, identify sources, and support that argument. So they're taking notes, they're inference, they've got a lot of things going there. On the old ISAT, for the one that we've just rocked out of the park for years and years and years, it was all multiple choice, and it was at a minimum proficiency standard. It's great to know that 68% of our district was advanced on the old ISAT. But could that really be true? We're about to find out. Yeah. Clearly defined by the standards, every kid took the same question, and everybody had that back at the same content areas. The new one, it's computer adaptive, different types of questioning, different things going on, the performance task, and the 2 people that you have behind me wrote questions for the exam. In fact, we had 9 teachers from our district that actually wrote the test questions. So it's not just coming from this big testing conglomerate. Our teachers had the ability to submit these questions that will be used. And our teachers can actually apply to score the exam if they'd like. So, what are we doing to help kids get ready? And this is a big shift, a big change that we have as well. What are we going to do? The old ISAT, only measured on what a kid could recall and understand. Remember, it was at a minimum proficiency. This new assessment is going to get into application, analysis, synthesis, and ask kids to create things based on what they have. Very different way of doing things. So again, I'd like to talk about our goals as a district. We want kids to graduate who are college and career ready, period. We have a full college and career pathway that we start with grades K and 1, talking about what college is, what they want to be when they grow up. Well, you want to be a doctor? Did you know that you're going to have to take a lot of college? And here are some of the courses that you'd like to be able to take once you get into middle school and high school to be able to achieve that goal. Mr. Handelman already talked about the fact that we're doing well in that area, but this should emphasize some of those goals as well. So once again, I'd like to give it back to both Lynn and to Ryan to talk about some of the things that they've experienced in item writing for this assessment, and also some of the preparations that we're doing in the classroom level to help teachers understand these expectations and, most importantly, prepare kids.
Thanks, Mike. So as exciting as interim assessments are to talk about, I figured I would share a little mini story to sort of set the stage. And my very first teaching job, day before kids show up, so I'm excited, I'm nervous, all those things, and we're getting the pep talk from the principal about the big tests and how important it is that the kids have to do well. And I knew I had, these tests out there, but I didn't really maybe realize the magnitude of them. And so after this big speech and the whole department's there, I'm the new guy, and I was excited. Okay, I can handle a challenge, and I asked the question in front of everybody. So when do we get to see the tests? So I know what I'm aiming for, and everybody just laughed. And I didn't know it was so funny. And then I realized, oh, that was a dumb question. Apparently, we apparently don't get to see this test. It's behind lock and key somewhere. We don't know. And this is, by the way, is 10 years ago or more. But then I kept going. Well, do I get to see practice tests? Do I have any information to help me hit these targets that you just told me were so important? And the answer was no. And I did, best I could, and for 9 months we did it. And then I watched the kids take the test and was heartbroken when everything that they had on their test looked nothing like I had done for the last 9 months. And so what I want to share with you is that Smarter Balance is the first thing, the first consortium to recognize that that's not fair. That's not a good way about going about business. So they do have the summative piece, and there will be high stakes to that. There will be accountability tied to that. But they're the first thing to offer support for teachers on the journey to get there, so that it isn't a surprise in May for the kids, for the teacher. And so I really wanted to share what they are offering us, because it really, in my opinion, it's a big game changer. So the first one in the lower left is formative assessment practices. So there's a lot of research that this is important, the ability to, on a daily level, monitor and adjust kids, or adjust based on how kids are doing. And we have a resource from Smarter Balance called the Digital Library. And this is packed full of all sorts of formative assessment lessons, techniques, trainings for teachers. And it's a very comprehensive, very thorough place for teachers to go to get better at keeping their pulse on how kids are doing day to day and adjust. The second thing, and on the bottom right-hand side, this is this idea of interim assessments. And so for the first time, teachers can actually give their kids a test from Smarter Balance, have it scored, get the feedback, but it comes back to the teacher, not to the state. And they can use them as they see fit, when they see fit. So the teacher can teach something, see how the kids are doing, how they would fare on the SBAC, get the information, and then adjust to help kids get closer and closer to this new loftier target. Plus, the kids are in a low-stakes environment. It's a very comforting thing. So they might have maybe a half dozen experiences just like the real test before they actually see the real test. So the summative piece is a higher expectation. However, I believe it's a much fairer thing, because we now are giving these resources so we know what it's going to look like, and so will the kids. The last little piece, this test is much more about thinking and understanding and less about memorizing and those procedures. And so to me, as human beings, we can think. We're capable of that. An old test, you either knew it or you didn't. End of story. This test, every question has access points. So even if you forgot perhaps one piece of information, if you're able to think and able to kind of persevere on a question, you have different ways of making your way towards an answer. And that's, as item writers, that's what we sort of experienced, how we write these questions. We're going, this is just a great question to see our kids able to think and understand these kind of important concepts.
And I just wanted to comment as someone who actually scored items as well. I scored items for 8th grade, and one of the exciting things to see is that it does give the students the opportunity to practice those authentic writing tasks that they're going to do in their classroom. And the fact that they will, like Ryan said, they will be given credit for what they know and their ability. It's not going to be an all or nothing when they're scored. The rubric's designed to acknowledge what they can actually do. So I think that's a real plus.
Well, again, we've tried to go through a lot in this time. We recognize that this is probably overwhelming, going through 30 minutes of curriculum and assessment for you. But we want to let you know that certainly we are available and the resources are available. We're going to be pushing information out to moms and dads in our district. We'd be more than glad to work with our local community to make sure that you are informed about these expectations. The state of Idaho has presented a portal for parents and guardians and anybody else who is interested in taking a look at it, where you can actually go in and take the practice test yourself, mom and dad. Okay. Even better, no scores come back, so you can feel confident about yourself. You don't have to have anything up against you. And then also you can find out more information about elements of the test, how kids are going to be tested, what the scores are going to look like, what the reports are, how are you going to be informed with everything. We've got all of that information listed on our district website for you. Just click on the department link and you can actually hit curriculum to see every curriculum guide that we've created in our district in English, language arts, mathematics, science, social studies, you name it, have all been rewritten from grade K all the way up. You want to take a look at departments' assessments and find out more information about the Smarter Balanced, including that, it's all right there for you, and we'll be more than glad to be able to answer any questions that you have. We do recognize that we have to be inventive. We have to constantly improve. And in this case, we need to improve. These new goals and expectations are good for our district. They're going to challenge us, and it's going to force us to be able to make sure that we're at the top for the many years to come. On behalf of our team, I'd like to say thank you, and I know you must have some questions.
Thank you. That was excellent information. And we do have some questions.
Okay.
And because I can't read without my glasses, I'm going to let Chris read them.
Thank you, Nancy. Our first question is regarding the earlier commentary about Idaho core standards. Should parents be concerned that the Idaho core could be overturned? And if so, what can parents do to show their support?
Certainly the legislature makes the decision in our state. These were adopted by our legislature in 2010. There is always a possibility that that carpet could be taken out. If that's the case, we'll circle the wagons and do the best that we can. But I honestly have no idea and do not have a plan at this point if that were to happen.
Hey, Mike, I'll jump in on that one too,
Yep.
real quick. Just to share too, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, I'm speaking to math standards, I don't know about ELA, but the math, this council in 1989 released a set of standards that looked very, very similar to the Common Core. So these standards, while they're new and they're controversial and there's will they come, will they go, they're rooted in a philosophy that's been around that we have known to be best practice. We know this is what we do with kids. So I think regardless of the names or those political moves, the heart and soul of what we're trying to accomplish, it's not going anywhere because we know that's what's best for kids right now.
I'll just chime in. One of the parts of that question was, what can I do about it? And as Mike said, it's up to the legislature, and you each have legislators, and you can contact them. I'm in regular contact with our legislators weekly. We have a phone conference, superintendents have a phone conference with folks down in Boise. And they tell us regularly that they get emails, they get phone calls, and they chart those things. So if you want to have a voice about what your opinion is, make sure you reach out, make a phone call, send an email, and tell them what your opinion is. Because they're the ones who do make those important decisions, and they need to hear from you. It's better for them to hear actually from parents than from educators, but they hear from educators regularly.
Thank you very much. We have another question from the audience. And as we know, there's lots of mixed emotions in the media and in our community about the Common Core. The question poses, if Common Core is so good, why are there states and districts all over the country pulling out of Common Core or SBAC?
I can give a general answer. Most of the states who have pulled out of that consortium are worried about local control, is the one piece. Now, that's always in more of a personal decision. Local control is hard to be able to define. One of the challenges that comes up is the fact that really who does control those standards? In our state, it's the state legislature. And they did a series of community events and things like that. But I have never met anybody who's actually opposed to the standards. Most of the people who I've actually talked to and had really good conversations with have been opposed to how they were put in, or that it was put in because we had to accept this or had to do this. It was more of a political-driven argument. The standards themselves are strong. They are much stronger than what we had in the state of Idaho before. It's difficult for us as a school district because we, again, are at the liberty of what our legislature asks us to do. So we certainly will abide by them. They're good goals for us to be able to meet, but those are going to be challenges.
Another concern that some people in this state have also has to do with, like Mike said, not necessarily the standards themselves, but the assessment and then the data from the assessment. We know there's concern about collecting data at the, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level. And one thing we try to express, first of all, Mike did say that we do have a lot of local control. We have people in our midst who have created questions and who are creating our curriculum, choosing our curricular materials, all those things. In terms of the data piece, you might remember our former Senator Getty actually introduced legislation which was passed last year, which has to do with ensuring that we are not sharing data that's identifiable or inappropriate. So any data that is shared is what's called aggregated in terms of putting our numbers together and sending that forward. So that's to me, that's the other thing that I've heard, that there's concern. A, are we controlling things locally? And B, are we sending information about our kids to people who really shouldn't have their noses in that? And we feel confident that that's not happening. Neither one of those things is happening here.
The last piece that I would chime in with is the content of the exam. Several people were worried about, are the questions going to lead kids into different areas? Are they going to get into ideology, those types of things? I would never volunteer for this committee, but they met anyway. In December, about 300 Idahoans applied to review all 33,000 possible items on the exam. Only 3 questions were tossed out. So they have been independently reviewed by Idahoans. If the concerns were there, they should have been levied at that time.
And I'm just going to add something to that. As someone who was involved in writing the questions, one of the parts of the training involved looking at questions that are unbiased and the sensitivity to populations. So that's another thing that's considered in the development of the assessment as well.
Mm-hmm. More questions?
I have time for a few more if you're willing to continue to stand. Thank you very much for your detailed responses and multiple voices. This is really helpful for us as a community. Our next question goes back to something that Matt talked about the data concerns there. If you turn that issue on its head, this question is pretty accurate. How would a parent be able to view their child's test scores, and will the results be ready this school year?
Sure. Well, first of all, anytime that we assess a student in a formal way, a benchmark assessment, a state test, it's always on their student test portfolio on our district website and our student management system. So it's in a secure area where moms and dads can log in and they can see every test that they had through Skyward Family Access. So secure and only available for moms and dads to be able to see. We expect results to be back from this assessment within about 10 days of a student completing all 4 pieces: English language arts, performance test, computer adaptive, math, performance task computer adaptive. That's actually built into the contract to provide the test, that we'll have those results back. And the results will be much more specific. Previous tests would give a score and then identify if a student was below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced. This is actually going to give a sliding scale based on the ability of each student, because the standards are pretty much across a continuum. You could have a 6th grade kid who's now in an 8th grade geometry level, and we'd be able to see that, share that with moms and dads.
I think we now have time for one more last question. With the new curriculum, at what point is it determined that a child would pass or be held back during the school year?
Yeah, it's mostly a decision that we have as a team decision at the end of the year. We do have procedures in our district that do talk about holding a student back, but it's mostly for a student really not being able to meet those expectations. But it would be a team decision with the parent as part of that, the teachers involved, and the building principal.
In our middle schools and high schools, it is credit driven. So the students need to earn a certain number of credits in order to move to the next grade level. We have summer school offerings for students who aren't meeting those expectations. We also have, as I mentioned, remedial courses and credit retrieval during the school year that we offer. Elementary is a little bit more difficult because sometimes you might have a student who is meeting the standard in math but not in reading. So what do you hold the student back? And we always partner with the parents when we're talking about those things. There's data that shows that holding students back can actually be detrimental to them finishing school. And so there are a lot of factors, not just academic, but social, emotional development as well. So we look at it very carefully, and we have to partner with the parent, because if you're going to hold a student back, it's a big decision, and there needs to be buy-in from all parts. And if the student's old enough, the student also needs to recognize this is going to work for me. We need to make sure that we are meeting their needs. So if we don't hold them back, we need to figure out how do we remediate. And I'll be talking a little bit about another system I mentioned earlier that we're continuing to try to get better about providing interventions for students who are struggling.
We're going to sneak in one more here
Great.
to make sure we get everyone's question answered. Thank you very much to the audience for your participation tonight. The last question was concerning if the district does the district expect the ISAT 2.0 scores to be lower than the previous ISAT scores where our district has traditionally outperformed?
I'll address it. When the first ISAT came out in the year 2000, our district passage rate was 66%. It's pretty abysmal, but it's a transition. We were on a previous MAP assessment that we had in the district, and by the time that we finished with that ISAT, we're the highest achieving district in the state, around 94%. I would assume that this exam is going to challenge us in that same way. Now, I can't give you any idea as to where the target's going to be or how the scores are going to come out. That's one of the reasons why we're using these interim assessments and all of these other things to make kids feel prepared. I have a feeling that we will still be towards the top of the districts in the state, but at the same time, I can tell you that we take every one of those pieces very seriously. And we'll look into the results, we'll find out where our curriculum needs to be adjusted, and monitor along the way.
So Mike, at the very beginning of his presentation, he had that bingo board with all the,
Oh yeah, probably said something.
No, he didn't, but I'm gonna throw one in that wasn't up there. It's called an implementation gap,
Oh.
or dip. An implementation dip. And when you start something new, like Mike said, you expect there to be a dip. And then we learn, like Ryan was talking about, how we now have the opportunity to see what it is we're going to need to do to help our students be successful. And we are absolutely expecting an implementation dip. And we absolutely know we're going to continue to get better after that, the continuous improvement that I talked about from the beginning. Exactly where we start, we don't know, but we know that we'll set our baseline there and keep moving forward to help our students be successful. The state has a plan to be recognizing that when the Common Core was set up, it was really set up, the assumption when you're taking this high stakes exam in 11th grade, that you would have had Common Core instruction from kindergarten all the way through 11th grade. And some of these students now are just jumping in after having it for a couple of years and being asked to meet that same standard. Those students would have had the advantage, years down the road. So the expectation for a cut score in terms of graduation requirement, that's something that the state of Idaho has been in conversation with as one of the governing states in the Smarter Balance in trying to figure those things out and setting those standards. But absolutely, we're expecting that implementation depth, and absolutely, we're going to keep getting better after that. And again, it's not new to the Common Core. A lot of people say, oh, you're doing this and the Smarter Balance, that's the problem. Like Mike said, that same thing happened with the ISAT. It actually happened twice with the ISAT because they adjusted the ISAT in the middle.
Thank you for the excellent answers for the audience questions and some very insightful discussion. We will now move on to our final topic of the evening. Superintendent Handelman and Laura Rumpler will discuss the school district strategic planning process and direction.
Thanks for coming, Russ. At the very beginning of the night, thank you, Nancy was talking about some of the things the CEP does. And she was describing this award that's given, that the CEP is sponsoring for our elementary teachers, called the Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award. And I want to give a little credit where credit is due. Dave Eubanks, who's one of our trustees who's here tonight, and Laura have teamed together and worked with community organizations, the Kiwanis, as well as the CEP, in recognizing some of our great teachers in our district. And we chose to call it the Invest, Inspire, Innovate Award because this has to do with our strategic direction. Some people call this a strategic plan. We think of a plan as something sort of static, and a direction is something that's going to take us to new levels and take us to a new point. So these are sort of our three tag words for our strategic direction. And they come directly out of our mission statement and our vision statement. We worked hard with our school board to hone down what it is we want for our kids. A mission is what we do, and a vision is where we're going to go. So the mission statement that we landed on, as the school board landed on it, and we had a lot of input. We ran this through every school staff. We ran it around community organizations. We had it posted on our website. But the mission statement is we invest in each student to prepare, challenge, and advance well-educated, resilient, and future-ready citizens. So you see the word investment there. And then, in terms of the vision, where we want to go, Coeur d'Alene Public Schools is an education leader promoting opportunities for innovation in learning and inspiring excellence in everyone. So those are sort of the overarching areas that we set forth when we started our strategic direction in the visioning process to say, okay, this is what we want, this is what we think we're about, and this is where we want to go.
And as you may recall, if you were with us last year about this time at the State of the District, we handed out cards and asked you some questions. And we did that, as Matt mentioned, around the community to all different sorts of groups. So we went to every single staff and did a presentation at all of our schools. We went through thousands and thousands of comments with regards to words specifically around what powerful words and what words meant to people, both in their heart and their head, with regards to mission and vision. And so it took us almost a year and a half to get to this point. And as Matt mentioned, then we came up with these 5 key focus areas. And we were very intentional that we wanted this process, as Matt said, to be very future focused and not be stuck or stagnant or have this large, voluminous document sitting up on a shelf that got dusty. So we came up with this concept of having these 5 key focus areas. So it was a very approachable process for people to engage in and to continue to revisit as we do all of the work in our district. And the first key focus area is safe, supportive, and vibrant learning environments. And we came up with this concept and worked from our school board to our teachers to our community members of what does that mean? What does that mean for our kids and our schools and our staff? And it really means this concept of feeling safe and secure as a human being in our schools, and also have that physical safety as well. Some of the things that we've been doing in our district that if you've been tracking us the last couple years, is we have really been intentional with regards to our anti-bully efforts and changing the culture of respect amongst students and amongst staff members and amongst community members. And we call it Stand Up, Speak Up. So if you've had the opportunity to participate in some of our Stand Up, Speak Up activities that we've had, we've done everything from public service announcements and video contests and campaigns for students to share what that means, ice cream socials, engagement, focus groups, and meaningful work with, as Matt will probably mention too, an expert that we've brought into our schools in our community, Stephen Wessler, who's been in Coeur d'Alene several times. It also means the physicality of our schools and the safety of our schools. And for those of you who were with us 2 years ago, it was less than 2 months after the Sandy Hook tragedy when we were talking about what are we going to do in our school system to make it a physically safer place. Then last year we shared with you our implementation plan of how we were having the visitor buzz-in systems and changing the way we were approaching and having those layers of physical safety in all 17 of our schools.
So the second focus area is high expectations for all, and we've talked quite a bit. I talked about this. Mike and Lynn and Ryan also talked about whether it's the standards or our achievement, the assessments, and each one of the bullets beneath on the previous slide and also here in the next couple are the goals for each one of these focus areas. So we take pride in the fact that we have high achievement, but we also talk about how we need to keep getting better and have high expectations for every student, even those 18% of those third graders who aren't yet meeting the standard on the IRI. So these are the three goals. I'm not going to read those to you either, but you'll notice also there's going to be some overlap between these areas, because the last one could certainly, on this list, could certainly fit into another area. Everything we do is interrelated. I call them tendrils often when I talk about all the many things we do and each decision we make, how it affects something else. But we're working on ways to have students be more involved in their work, self-assessment, and again, trying to get every student to that grade level or beyond. I mentioned both of these things earlier, but the equipping educators, when we talk about that one of those two areas that the board decided we are going to do when we ask for extra funds from the levy, is to equip educators with the tools they need. As Mike said, 13-year-old math books average of 15-year-old textbooks in our district. We don't think that's good enough for our kids, and we want to do better. So we want to equip educators with tools. Those tools might be textbooks. They might also be technology tools. There are a multitude of things that we can do. And again, as I think it was Ryan was talking about when we're talking about those math standards, the critical thinking, the problem solving, these are things that, as Mike said, we don't just flip a switch and they don't just happen. And so we need to make sure that we are equipping teachers with those things, which includes professional development. Mike was talking about those secret Monday meetings. He was talking about our district collaboration, where we provide professional development for our teachers, and our instructional coaches are integral to that. And we also have classroom teachers who are teaching each other the best practices. Attracting and developing, I just want to mention that for a moment. We live in a beautiful place. We live in an amazing community. We're blessed for that. And because of that, we tend to attract folks. People want to come here and work. At the same time, we also live on the I-90 corridor very close to Washington State, which frankly pays people more. We know that, and that's true in every profession probably around here. But we run the risk of losing people. We train them, and they might move off to greener pastures. And we need to make sure that we are attracting and retaining staff by the fact that we're going to treat them well, we're going to equip them, they're going to want to stay here. And we can't just rest on our laurels. So, I was actually just talking to our Human Resources Director today about the job fairs that are going to be in the area coming up. And how do we balance making sure that we're reaching out as well as trying to find folks from within our community to be our teachers, to be the future of our community.
And it's a very timely topic. Matt was interviewed just this last week by a reporter from National Public Radio. And it was a great story with regards to looking at Idaho and teacher pay, as well as that whole concept of retaining the best and the brightest. And how do we do that as a system?
Governor Otter's increase of funding includes plans to try to increase the base pay, the starting pay for teachers, which currently is under $32,000 a year, and the goal is to get it to $40,000 a year, but that can't happen in one fell swoop. But it does cost a lot of money, so that's a large chunk of what Governor Otter's proposal is for the budget. The fourth goal area is individualization. And I've mentioned a couple of times that when we are trying to reach students, we know that they each come to us on a different level. Everyone's across the continuum, and it's challenging. We have classrooms of 32 fifth graders, for example, and trying to meet each individual's needs. That's a huge challenge. So how do we do that? Well, part of it is with professional development. And one thing I'll just mention now that when the question was, well, what do you do when a student can't really be needs to be passed to the next grade level, but can't really reach a standard in one of the areas? We are part of a new grant this year called Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MTSS. That's another one of those things for your bingo board. But we wrote a grant to be part of this, and it is that very thing, training administrators and teachers and all of our staff to figure out how do you best intervene, how do you find the right interventions for the individual students. We've been great at this. When I came to this district 5 years ago, I was amazed at what we did with the resources we had, that we have something called Switch in elementary schools where we're really honing down and meeting the needs of individual students, even though there are 32 students in a fifth grade class, figuring out how to regroup them at times and really meet them at their point of need instruction, we call it. But we're continuing to try to get better at that, which includes both learning from others and then turning around and training our staff in that. Other things that we do for individualization, we are continuing to take advantage of technologies. We have more blended learning classes. We have more individual devices in classrooms from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade in terms of trying to meet the individual needs and allow students to move at their own pace. And again, we're training teachers to be comfortable with those devices, as comfortable as the digital natives who are our students. I think you're next.
Yes, I have a first grader and a third grader that are, I think there's a new terminology beyond the digital native. It's amazing what they can do. I had my first grader coding the other night and working with his brother on that, and I was just watching it in awe. So then we come to the fifth area of focus, and that's where it really involves everyone in this room. It's this concept of family and community engagement. And what we really wanted to, from all of the comments and the thoughts that came through this whole process was, what does it mean to be a school system in an amazing community? And we look at our community as we support Coeur d'Alene, Dalton Gardens, Hayden, Kootenai County, Fernan, and a variety of other smaller municipalities, including, I live down the road here with Little Hutter as well as is a community within our school system. And how do we embrace and encourage folks to continually to engage with us? And this idea of expanding, we're really looking at how we best utilize volunteers. We have amazing volunteers in all of our schools across the district. We have folks that come in on a regular basis every week and sit down and read one-on-one with children. We have other volunteers who make certain that kids walk across the street and get into the school building in the morning safely. We have other folks who step up and our judges, just recently last week at our district-wide spelling bee. There's always a place for people to volunteer. How do we encourage that and embrace that and get more people volunteering in a formalized and informalized way within our school system? Cultivating the existing and new partnerships. We have, I think as a culture in this community, have those great relationships. How do we continue to honor those, hone those, and then bring in new groups and organizations too who want to participate in our school system? And through that, it allows us to continue that sense of pride and ownership of that strong community with that strong public school system. And then engaging students and families in this continuous learning opportunity throughout the year. One of the most interesting things we heard was from parents, staff members, and community members and business leaders who are looking at those students who are graduating and looking for those soft skills as well as those intellectual skills and the things that they've learned along the way of how do we keep that engagement, that learning year round. So we're looking at ways, we had a pilot project this last summer at Fernand for students. I know there's been a number of things pointed out in the Vision 2030 process for Coeur d'Alene with regards to how do we continue to engage learning for both adults and children throughout the whole entire year. I just saw recently that one of our elementary schools has been actively working with the community library network throughout Kootenai County and going, okay, how are we going to get kids reading and engaging and engaged in the library system throughout the summertime too? And Matt will mention, he can mention here a little bit this concept of the summer slide and how do we make certain that that is not happening with our students so when they come back in September, they're excited to be learning again and they've been learning all summer long.
And so, another one of the partnerships we have in addition to the kids camp that Laura was mentioning is we're working on strengthening our relationship with the area libraries, the one that you're sitting in right now, as well as the Hayden Library, the Kootenai County Library System, and working on projects and plans to engage students in some book clubs this summer and that kind of thing. Like Laura said, it is always a challenge. There's strong data that shows that there's a summer slide, and we also have strong data that keeping kids engaged and keeping their families engaged with that as well is a great remedy for that. So we're always looking for ideas and partnering with folks. We don't do these things by ourselves. We rely on community partners, and CEP has been an incredible partner in that kind of thing as well. In terms of they've been involved in volunteer things and summer things, so we appreciate the CEP for that.
And one of the things too, circling back to the whole concept of the strategic direction, is the idea we are the second largest employer in Coeur d'Alene, and so how do we have this focused vision and mission for our staff to be focused in the same direction under the leadership of Superintendent Handelman and the school board, and also our school board too. How do we keep our school board focused and in a forward direction? And so when we did present this a couple of months ago, we've drilled it down to basically a one-sheeter that is an overview of our mission and vision and then these 5 focus areas. And we've encouraged, and our school board has been very excited about keeping these areas in focus as we're having conversations at our board meetings, as we're having conversations within the district and out in the community, is the work that we're doing and are the topics that we're talking about fit and are they in alignment with what we have decided is our strategic direction. So most of the information, or if not all of the information, is already up on the district website with regards to what we've shared this evening. And I would pop it up and show you on the district website, but I think there's some technical challenges with regards to getting out on the web here in the library this evening. This is prominent on our website. You can click on it, you can download it, you can review it. We also have some of the presentations from this evening already up on the website, as well as the additional information that Matt had shared with regards to the information about the upcoming maintenance and operations levy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Handelman, Ms. Rumpler. We would now welcome questions from the audience on this topic, these topics that they discussed.
Or anything else?
Or anything else.
Or anything, yes, yes. This was our last topic of the evening, so we do have a few minutes for questions beyond this topic. Okay. All right, thank you. Sure.
Do you want people to come to the microphone?
Yeah.
I can talk loud.
Mike.
You were talking about the dip for the new testing. Were you talking in reference to the rest of the state of Idaho or to other states? And so there's multiple parts. So do other states have a head start? And if you're just talking in reference to Idaho, why would we be any more sensitive to a dip than any other school district?
Great question. Sorry I wasn't clear about that. Yes, we are expecting an implementation dip in the Coeur d'Alene School District. I would expect a similar dip in every district in the state of Idaho. And other states who have already started doing this have already started experiencing that dip. So we've seen that in states like Kentucky and New York. So the warning signs are there. And just because you know it's coming, it doesn't mean you can stop it. But you're absolutely right. This is something that we know is going to happen both from our own history with the ISAT and also from seeing what others are doing across. There's another consortium outside of the Smarter Balance Consortium that's called it's PARCC. And again, similar. It's the same thing that the dip is there and it's pretty severe. And like I said, we're bracing ourselves for it. We hope people are aware that it's going to be there and that we will, as soon as we find out where we're starting, we'll move our path forward and upward.
Any additional questions?
We won't hit you with a microphone, we promise. We're going up.
Right, we do have a couple hands raised.
I'm not going to ask a question, I want to make a speech. It's been 25 years since we had children in the public school.
He wants you at the microphone. We can bring it to you. Sorry.
My wife Judy and I have been evangelists for public education for 40 years. And Judy's back here somewhere. It's been 25 years since we had children in the public schools. And I can say tonight that I have never been more impressed with the message that you deliver and the cohesiveness that you have this pulled together. And I'd be happy to pay an extra couple of dollars on property tax to advance the mission that you're describing. So thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Thank you. It's a great way to end it, I think. Go ahead.
Not scripted.
So I'm kind of a rookie at this. My oldest is in 3rd grade, so I've been in the school system for very little. So throughout my studying and stuff, I love coming and learning from you guys, and I so appreciate all the time and effort that you put in, and the hours that you put in, and I so appreciate my school and my teachers as well. We have amazing schools at Ramsey. I'd like to actually go back to that question that was posed about the fear that's kind of come up with Common Core and SBAC in our country. Why is there fear in some districts and not with us? And why are there concerns? And so, like, for instance, the most recent Madison County down in Rexburg area wanted to pull out. They want to use the MAP assessment testing instead of the SBAC testing because their superintendent is very nervous about the SBAC and the things that they've seen back east where they've used it a little bit more and things like that. Do you not have any of the same concerns that so many other districts that I know have pulled out are? Tacoma is one.
I've
Long
read some
Island.
of Jeff's writing. I haven't actually spoken to him about it. And you know, I can't necessarily speak to his fears. I think Mike said it's an individual thing. And you said, why isn't this district worried? Well, part of it is our, I guess you call it our ethos, for saying what's in front of us, what's our mission to help kids, and what can we do to make it happen in terms of, you know, getting better at what we do and therefore helping our kids. In our community, there's certainly some fear. We speak to people on a regular basis, and again, we try to have individual conversations. What we try to do is say, here's what we know, here's what we can do, here's what we know we have control of. If I had, you know, a fourth grader, you know, who had to sit down to test for 4 hours, would I feel comfortable with that? Yes, that's me personally. Might someone else not feel comfortable with that? Absolutely. Might someone worry that a test question is going to steer their child into a direction that they don't want? Yeah, I mean, that could have been true with the old ISAT as well. So it is very individual. There are people out there, you know, I don't know if you saw, there's sort of counterpoint in the Coeur d'Alene Press just this past weekend, which I thought laid out pretty well some of the fears and some good answers to those fears. And again, what we choose to do is figure out what we're going to do and move forward with it. Do we want to fight this? Well, we want to do what's right for our kids. We do believe that these standards are good for our kids, and our teachers are up for the challenge, even if we're not going to be perfect as we start out. But you know, again, believing that this is good for our kids, like Mike said, the test, it's asking questions we'd like our kids to be able to answer. Is the test going to be perfect the first time? Probably not. Just like the ISAT made adjustments, I'm betting the ISAT 2 will be making adjustments as well.
I guess the follow-up question to that is the data collecting. How are you then, you said that's not happening in our district. How are you fighting that and the psychometric testing part of the SBAC? In all their material, you know, psychometric is flashed a lot in a lot of their material, and also the data collecting. So how do you fight that here in
Say
our
a lot
district?
of their material is in the people who are saying that there's a concern about it.
And
Well, there's not psychometric data is not being collected in this test any more than it was in the last test. I mean, I know again that was something that was written, and I don't know if Mike wants to talk any more to this, but we're collecting the same kind of data on students. What are your scores? The parents have access to that, and then as I said before, yes, we send information to the state. Anything that goes out of here, there are very strict restrictions on, and then again, the idea of aggregating. In other words, we
And
send
disaggregate.
a combination of scores so we can see how are we doing as a system compared to Madison, compared to Boise, or compared to Spokane now, or compared to Nevada or California.
And that's controlled by the district with what kind of information can go out or no?
Well, it's part of it is controlled by the district and part of it is controlled by the state. There's a system called IC, what does that stand for?
Idaho System for Educational Excellence.
Right, and so we do have information there. The information about the standardized tests automatically gets loaded
Correct.
into that and uploaded to the state in that way.
Great, thank you.
He's back.
I'd like to ask one more question. This kind of follows up on one of the other things. Will the teachers have access to individual students' test scores in order to evaluate the effectiveness on the test and whether or not specific kids are having trouble with the new format?
Yes, the challenge always is, and no matter what state I've been in or which tests we're on, the challenge is that we test toward the end of the year, and then we don't get the data until it's really sort of too late for that teacher to be working on it. But we do have the data, and we always provide it for the next year's teacher, and absolutely. And I think Mike mentioned earlier that the data that we're going to be getting back from this is going to be more specific in terms of strands and being able to specifically have an idea of what areas the student is strong in and what areas the student is struggling in. So yes, absolutely, schools will be getting that information back so that we can tailor our instruction toward that. It's hard. These are really what are called summative assessments. We used those words before. And as important as that data is what Ryan was talking about and Lynn was talking about in terms of the new bank of questions that just went live recently, in terms of teachers being able to use those. So before the test, we have a better idea along the way, interim assessments, formative assessments, so we can help students along the way and not wait till the end.
So I would just like to say one thing, to do a nice shout out to some volunteers this evening who dedicated their time to help pull this all together. And I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but there are 3 gentlemen in the production booth that I get the honor and privilege of getting to know and work with each month. I sit on the CDA TV Channel 19 advisory committee to the city and the city council with regards to Channel 19 as a great community service opportunity for our community to air great programming such as this. And so we have Jeff, and we have Andy, and we have Bruce back there who donated their time tonight to help put this on. So I just wanted to give a thank you to them as well.
It wasn't God telling us to speak into the microphone, it was one of those 3.
Great, thank you very much. This concludes this evening's program. We would again like to thank the Coeur d'Alene School District for presenting to our community this evening some topics of importance to our local schools and our community. We'd also like to thank our audience for engaging with us here in the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership and the school district to support our mission of excellence in public education. We'd also like to thanks to Java and Sherman, and now in Hayden, for the coffee and cookies tonight, and Bunkhouse Media for their donation of the video recording services. Please take a moment on your way out tonight to visit our membership table to learn about becoming a free member of CEP. Join our mailing list, become in the loop on emerging policy issues and topics of educational discussion. You can also visit our website at cdaep.org or find us on Facebook. The Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership has taken a strong organizational stance in favor of the upcoming M&O levy. We think this is an important part of the continued success of our district. As we heard tonight, we are seeing some amazing results out of the district, and we as an organization encourage you to support that levy. Tell your friends. It's on March 10th. If you are not registered to vote, as mentioned earlier, there are voter registration forms in the back. We can take those from you. Our board member, Lisa May, standing at the back membership table, will take them and get them to the correct folks at the county to be sure that you get an absentee ballot in order to participate in setting the future of our community and our education system. So thank you again for coming. We invite you to enjoy some refreshments, visit with CEP board members and the district staff, and we appreciate your attendance. Thank you, drive safely, and have a nice evening.